Greetings. Welcome to Making an Essay Picture Perfect. Tips and tricks to make essays college level. The first thing you'll want to think about is topics. A lot of times when people get to college, they're used to doing topics that are very common when they were in middle school and high school, such as discussions of pro or con abortion, you're for or against physician assisted suicide, gun control, legalization of things like marijuana, school uniforms, and other overdone topics. Those can be problematic because they are so overdone that you could throw a rock and hit something about them. And one of the goals in a college level research essay is to make sure that the student is having to do real research, like having to actually look for stuff. Whether you're using a college database, if you're using Google Scholar, it doesn't matter what you're using to do your research. The goal is to find a topic that is worthy of discussion, and that means not over discussed, focused enough for the length of your paper, of course, broad enough for the length of your paper because some papers are short and some are long. And you really want to make sure that you're doing something that's going to be meaningful and also something that the instructor will allow. And staying away from common topics will help you do that. It'll also make you just a better overall writer. So next thing is, did you choose a college level topic? True. Here's some past topics that were used in my classes. And remember, these are not thesis statements. Thesis statements are much more complicated in college level essays. These are the initial ideas of some students in past classes. So the first one, funding should be devoted to additional mental health and substance abuse programs. So it's not just something like for or against something. It's really talking about, hey, let's talk about what we need, right? So that's what this student is talking about. New self-care programs need to be developed to support medical personnel. A lot of times people want to stick to overtime for nurses or um, stressors for nurses or stressors for doctors or stuff like that. So you really want to be careful with things that are overdone because overtime for nurses is overdone. Now, I tell my students if you find something that's overdone, you can maybe fit that into a different area. Like overtime might be part of a discussion on self-care, right? Because that may impact how that person takes care of themselves if they're working too much. So you can pull some of that in, you just can't make it your entire topic if it's one of those overdone things. So schools should adopt new processes to accommodate transgender students. That's a relatively new topic that's being discussed, and that was last semester. It's a very good one because it's not overdone. There are studies out there that you can pull into research. So you really want to make sure you're really looking for something that's meaningful, that you have to do the research for. That's not the easiest thing to find research for, but you can find it. And it's not all over the place. Abortion discussions are all over the place. Um, you can find stuff on stuff like that just about anywhere on the internet. So you're not going to find that on some of these topics. So new processes are needed to address the growing dental issues among the homeless. Pretty specific. So if you were going to do something like abortion, which is a topic that I do not approve for students in my class because of how much it's been talked about, you could actually take that topic and you could mold it into something a little bit different. For example, abortion laws in a third world country, and you name it. Like if you found a third world country that you want to talk about, you could pull that into some topic where you talk about other things. Inside, I call it the topic umbrella. So if you're talking about medical personnel self-care programs, you might talk about counseling programs, paid time off, more paid time off, and things such as that. So there are different ways you can handle it, and there's no real right or wrong way. Even though I say, okay, you can't use these overdone topics, right? Then I go to the next step and I say, well, if you do, they have to be specific. So if you're talking about something like vaccines, for example, that's on here. You can get into a heated debate about yes, vaccinate or no, vaccinate. But what if you talk about accessibility of vaccines in another country? So, say, for example, COVID-19 vaccines and how it's related to the overall health of that country, and they don't have enough funding for that. Then you've got this little topic here that's not just about yes and no's, right? It's much deeper than the yes and no question, and that's really important in college level essays. So I'm going to skip this one. I think we went over all of those. And then this one is contraction. So here's another tip. It's not just about having a good topic, it's about writing out things in a college level way. A lot of times students want to use conversational language, and that includes contractions. Contractions are like don't, won't, isn't, and really what you need to know about those is just spell them out. It's that simple. You suddenly turn a paper into very informal to at least a little formal, depending on the rest of your language. So skip the contractions. The next tip is use third person. Okay, so first and second person, we really like to say I, me, we, our, us, you, and your. So you and your are the second person, or yours, right? So we don't want to point our finger at people and say you, right? And unless we're writing a personal essay, which would be up to your instructor, we really don't use first person. So be very mindful of that. That's not something you would normally use. Again, this might be something your instructor tells you to do, and in that case, you'll ignore what I just said and use whatever person they want you to write in. So examples of third person would be he, she, they, or say things like a person can or one can. So there are many ways you can do that. Most of the time when people use our, us, you, or your, it's pretty easily replaced with something else. So try to stay away from those. The next point is sources should have an author, a date, a title, and they should be current. Now, an author, I don't mean a username like best mom in the world that you might see on YouTube. I mean literally an author. It could be the first and last name of an author. It could be a group of authors. It could be an organization. That's still an author. The date should be on it. Um, I don't allow my students to use the ND, which means no date. It needs to have a date on it. Now, sometimes on websites it can get complicated, right? Because you might have the date might be the date that page was edited. So look around. Sometimes it's in the address bar of an article up at the very top where you see the internet address. It might be down at the very bottom where the page was edited, but a good source is going to acknowledge who wrote it and they're going to have a date on it. Also, the title. There have been times when a student came to me and said, hey, there's no title on this. Well, we don't want that. We want all of the pieces in there. And also, it should be current. Now, current can mean different things depending on what your subject is. Current might be within the past year, if it's the medical field. If it's a different field like engineering, it could be several years depending on what's changed. So you just really have to be mindful of the information that you're using and how current does that actually need to be. Another tip, establish credibility of the author. Now, students often ask me, how do you do that? Well, here's how you do it. If you're using your database at school, like most colleges have a database that you can search on. If you're using a database, you want to look up other articles that that author wrote. If you can't find it, you're going to go to the internet search and try to find that actual author and just see what is that author writing. Is that author affiliated with a college? Are they part of a group when they usually write? How long have they been writing on this? If you find something from 1970 on childcare and then this person wrote something in 1990 and 2020, that author's definitely can be considered credible. Now, do you have to have a doctoral degree to actually be credible? I tell students, no, of course not. You can have other you can gain information in other ways. For example, a reporter might write on sports and be the sportscaster, sports researcher, sports whatever for many years. And that is their job. That is what they've been doing. And they might not have a sports degree, but they know a lot about that subject. Another thing you can look at is a bio link. So you see here it says click a bio link. Sometimes in articles or in peer-reviewed journals online, even websites, you can find that author's name and read about them and determine whether or not you think that that person is credible. The next thing that you want to look at is the information. Is the information true? So this will help you stay away from conspiracy theories. You really want to make sure that you're looking to see if it's true in different locations. So for example, let's do news. If I were to look up a story and I was looking on CNN, the website or the television show, I'm watching something, and I find a topic on pollution, right? And then I look it up on something else like Fox. And if those information pieces match, I might consider those to be true. Now, you can look in other areas too. You can look in peer-reviewed journal articles, newscasts, all kinds of things to make sure that the information that you're getting for your paper is true and accurate. You don't want to present something that is inaccurate. Another thing is, and this should be self-explanatory, but always, always, always cite your sources. It's not just a violation of school policy. It is illegal to write something and not give credit where credit is due. And most colleges do have a plagiarism checker. Plagiarism is not giving credit, when credit is due. So always make sure that you give it. Even if you can't format something correctly, I know that I do count off points when someone is incorrect in their formatting, but they also don't get in trouble if they tried, because they are giving the credit where credit is due, even if it's not perfectly formatted. Use sentences with varied length. Now, this is a big deal because short and choppy sentences, for example, if I said, you have to write me a paragraph and it needs to be 5 or more sentences, and then I go in and all of your sentences are little bitty sentences like residents benefited. You see that one at the end of this example? Well, this one, though, provides different lengths of sentences, right? So it's according to Jones, and the little quotes backwards, it should be facing the ellipse. This is an ellipsis. The ellipsis means that this person took a quote out of the middle of a sentence in their source. So programs such as this one in Florida increased health by 40%, and there's the page number. This is actually MLA format. It's not APA. If it were APA, Jones would have a date here before the comma in parentheses, and you would also see P period space and the page number. So just keep that in mind that this is MLA. Other studies support this claim. Jones goes on to praise Florida personnel for implementing changes over a short period of time. Residents benefited. Okay, so we've got a quote, we've got one sentence that's sort of short, we've got one that's longer, and then we've got a pretty impactful one that is only 2 words. So just varying that sentence length shows maturity in your writing. Okay, so I tell students, don't be afraid to make a grammatical mistake, even though you need to check those before you turn them in, by writing short, choppy sentences, right? You're trying to avoid a mistake by doing that. Don't be afraid, be brave, right? Write, because the more you write, the more you correct yourself. Hopefully you're engaging in peer reviews in your classes, but the more you do that, the better you're going to get at it, the better you're going to get at writing. So my last thing is you can do this, right? You can do this. Hopefully your instructor, or in my case, I do. I provide some sources to help students, but don't be afraid to go look for stuff. Look up a topic on how to do something. YouTube and other websites have plenty of information to help you. You have got this. So whatever it is you're writing, I hope that these tips helped, and hopefully you'll subscribe and like the video. But mostly I just want you to be successful in your writing. So I hope that this helped you out, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you for listening.